everybody, I'm Tommy, and you are on the lifeboat. What's happening? I'll say hello in a second. I got a bunch of complaints from people in the live chat about me saying hi to everybody and doing the romper room thing. And you know what? It's never going to stop. Hi, Buffy. It's never going to stop. So if that's something that really bums you out, come in at the 4-minute mark or whatever makes you happy. Hey, everybody, do me a favor. Smack that like button, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for notification. It really chaps the backside of YouTube. At the end of the show yesterday, somebody said, this doesn't seem like the kind of content that they would want to restrict. And if you've never done this, then you kind of don't understand how they do what they do in terms of the free speech stuff. But it's one of those situations that if you say words that they don't want you to say, then they simply don't push the video. And average engagement for most YouTubers is between 3 to 5%. So if you got 100,000 views, right, you should be seeing about 3,000 people that are engaging with comments or likes or a combination of the two. And if you go and look at a video that's got 5,000 people that saw it and 1,000 likes, they're not pushing it. They're not sticking it into the algorithm. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is because I say a bunch of words that are on the you can't say these words list. And I'm never going to play that game. By the way, a couple of things. Number one, there were no French doors at her house. We do this stuff in real time. And very often I will talk about things that will have to be updated. And I'll tell you something else. Yesterday I was talking about the Iceman. And I was confusing the Iceman. I've read every true crime book you could. The last time I was in prison, I literally read a book a day. I'm not exaggerating. I read a book a day. And I read nonfiction and I read tons of true crime stuff. And I'm trying to remember the exact story. It may have been the wood chipper. I don't know if you know the story of the wood chipper killer. But anyway, there was a case where they tracked the person down via a freezer. This was not that case. That is not how they got him. It was through they sent in a undercover guy to get the Iceman. The Iceman's full of crap. Everybody who's ever been in the mob said the guy did 4 hits. Right. He's a guy that has claimed to kill 200 people. It was a great set of interviews. The Iceman interviews are fantastic. They're a lot of fun to watch. They just doesn't happen to be any truth to any of it. Right. This was a guy that after he got busted really started to blow up his personality. And every time he did an interview, the number of people he killed got bigger. Now, I don't know that that's admirable anyway, but in his head it was. And he wanted to become the most ghoulish dude in the world. So he told stories like, I let a guy pray because I could see he was praying. I said, I'll give you 5 minutes. You can pray to God. If God saves you, I won't kill you. He just came up with these things to try to make himself more horrific, that he tied people down in certain places and let rats eat them. Like the craziest stories. But the people that knew this guy said he was a clown. Yeah, he killed some people. One guy lent him $1,500. He didn't want to pay the guy back, so he killed him. He was just a lowlife is what he was. Now, here's the deal. Somebody pointed that out to me in the chat yesterday, after the chat, I should say. Freedom One. If you're watching, you may notice that your comments won't be up here because you're a douchebag, and the way that you like to talk to people is rude. If you think somebody's theory, by the way, is a stupid one, maybe don't say that, right? I don't want to hear anybody say, that's the dumbest theory I've ever heard. We spit out theories, and some of them won't be fantastic. But if we start calling people stupid, I'm going to get rid of you. You start calling people dumb, like everybody will get a pass because sometimes you hear a theory and it sounds like, is Iceman a code or a nickname? It was a nickname because he did freeze bodies to make it more difficult for them to try to do autopsies and to try to figure out exactly what he was doing. Or at least that is credited to him. Whether or not that was really him is hard to tell because the guy didn't tell the truth about anything. Hey, 200 of you, smack that subscribe button, hit the bell for notification, and for God's sakes, hit the like button. Yeah, today, Johnny Scoville was going to do 1 hot minute. But as I said, we've been changing up our banking from the U.S. to Ecuador, which we should have done earlier, to be honest with you. But that's kind of what took Johnny away from things today because everything is a little bit – the one thing people go, do you have a problem with anything in Ecuador? Banking, right? If you go to a bank, you're looking at spending a lot of time there. No one's in a hurry at banks, and very often it's a 30 to 40-minute thing at a minimum. Saw your brother. I was tripping. Thought you changed your voice. Yeah, that kind of happens. I get that a lot. William, good to see you. Lisa Palmer, how are you? CYN, good to see you. Daffy Duck, what's happening? I don't think I've ever said hello to you, Daffy Duck. Hopefully, hopefully if I have, right, that I was kind in the past. A lot of people also are saying I'm not kind on this channel. I tend to disagree with that. I really do. Colby, I can't catch the beginning of that. Random, how are you? DS Kitty Diane, good to see you. Hey, Jerry, how are you? I'm glad that you're here. Good day from Sydney. All right, I've been there. Christian, how are you? I'm glad that you're here. I went to Sydney, had a great time, man. Went to Sydney actually a couple of different times. Really enjoyed myself in Australia. I'm not allowed back there anymore, but they finally got that computer system to where it was working well, and they're not fond of felons. But I had a really good time there. Went to some great restaurants, did the whole thing. It was fun. Kevin, good to have you here. I appreciate that. It's a very kind thing to say. Hello, Heather. How are you? And if this bothers you people, then you don't understand my channel, right? My audience is absolutely 100% part of the channel. I like to allow people to interact. We talk about true crime. More than anything else, that's what we talk about here. We also talk about sobriety. In either case, I think it's important to allow people to weigh in. Jen, good to see you. So today's show is not this is not an April Fool's joke. Saw a lot of jackasses today that have YouTube channels. And if you did it, I'm not picking on you because I probably didn't see it. But a lot of people like to put up stuff like, this is it, I'm done, right? I quit. Or, hey, I'm getting arrested. I saw another one that said lawsuits coming from this person or that person. I don't know that I get it, man. Ironic, Australia is not fond of felons. You're not the first person to say that. Hello, Cindy. I try to be kind. I don't know that I always nail it. I like when you and Reese say hi to everybody. To little old nobody me. You're not a nobody. There's nobody in this audience that's a nobody, man. For real. Maybe that's why I say hi to them. I'll tell you something else. There was a time when I didn't have hundreds of people in a live chat, but the people that were here supported me through times where I wasn't big, right? So I'm certainly not going to forget them if I got 1,600 people in the chat for a video. It's never going to happen. And if that's a bummer for you, like I always say, man, you can go right past the water cooler, right on the left-hand side. You will see the exit. And from Massachusetts, good to see you. Random, how are you? I'm glad that you're here, Random. And I love everyone that was here from the beginning. I love the people that got here yesterday too, right? Try to treat everyone as if they've been here from day one, because this is a family. We talk about true crime. And today I'm going to be talking about true crime in a way that maybe you haven't heard before, because oddly enough, this is a story that is both really a bummer and kind of near and dear to my heart at the same time. Blue Jean Lady, good to see you. Skeeter, what's happening? Glad that you're here. So, look at that. Well, I'm glad that you caught alive. Hey, Robin. So when I was in prison, you meet a lot of people inside. It's just kind of one of those things that happen. And you're not going to get along with all of them. And a lot of them aren't going to like you. But I did time with a guy who is a famous gangster. I've talked about him on the channel before. His name is Joel, right? Everybody calls him Joe. It's just sort of an established thing. They will call him Joe Waverly. That's kind of, how every gangster like the Chin or, Two Times or any of those kind of nicknames that they all got. He was called Joe Waverly because of the street that he lived on. And he used to have a flower shop, believe it or not. He used to have a flower shop on Waverly Drive. And his name was, he got the gangster name Joe Waverly. This guy's the real deal. He's not one of these sort of ancillary guys. He was the consigliere of the Colombo crime family, right? Which is kind of like a third in command kind of thing underneath the Godfather, so to speak. I made you choose between me and Trump. Well, both of us will be on replay. So Joe Waverly was at one time actually the head of the Colombo crime family for a period of time. But he did some crazy stuff. And I'll show you what Joe looks like and thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Here's to pissing off YouTube. I love it. I love it. I really do. And it does. I promise you it does. Because I'm not going to play their game. And hopefully if we do this long enough, other people will stop playing that game as well. This is this handsome cuss when he was younger. That is Joe Kakashi. If you ever look him up, you're going to hear people say Kakashi. I promise you, I spent a lot of time with this cat, and his last name is pronounced Kakashi. He is senior. He had a son that was junior who unfortunately passed back in, I think, 2015. But he was also a made man. But this was a guy that he's the real deal. He's no joke. And there was an attempt on his life where they wanted to kidnap him just as he was leaving the flower shop. And 3 people attacked him, and he ended up fighting the 3 people, killing one, putting that person in the backseat of his car, and then with 5 bullet holes in him, he drove to the police station where he didn't give him any information, but they were able to get him help. He also went to war with some pretty famous gangsters, including Greg Scarpo, and who started Murder, Inc. That's him about the time I met him when I was in prison with him. That was his booking photo for his last rip, and this is what he looked like toward the end of his sentence. He is in his 80s now, And it is being alleged by a lot of channels and also allegedly by the FBI that this guy is now, looks like Warren Beatty. Boy, he would love to hear that. It's being alleged now that he has rejoined the crime family, and that he is, depending on which article you read, he may be the underboss of the Colombo crime family. If not, he is back in the job of consigliere, which is sort of like an advisor. I would really like to believe that this isn't the truth. I remember talking to him at length. He is a very fit guy for being in his 80s. However, there was also a pinch of laziness to him, and he would walk around the unit all day long. But when it came time to go to the chow hall, he wanted to be pushed in the wheelchair, and I pushed him. He fired the guy the day he met me. He was like, "You're going to push me from here on out," which I didn't have a problem doing, and it let us hang out and do a lot of talking. Really funny guy. I remember going to eat one day, and they were making Italian, and you didn't know what you were going to get on Italian day at this particular prison. It would just say Italian, and usually at most yards it's spaghetti. But this was a very, I don't know what the right word is. It was a great yard for food. It really was. Because two of the units there, one was for women and one was for people being deported. So on a prison that should have maybe 800 people, they're not dealing with 800 people. Those guys are getting different food, usually prepackaged crap. So there was a lot more food in there. You could go back up and get seconds, and they were very serious about trying to make it taste good, which is kind of wild. Hey, Just Joan, good to see you. So as the guys were leaving, Joel says to one of the guys, he goes, "Hey, man, what are they serving?" And he goes, "Manicotti." Now, if you're Italian, that is not the way most people say that, right? They will say manigot. And he looked at me and he goes, "What the hell are they serving?" And the kid says it again. He goes, "Manicotti." And he goes, "Rocco, you got any idea what he's saying?" I said, "Manigot." And he goes, "What? Why didn't he just say that?" Really a funny dude. I also saw him almost kill a dude who said to him, he came in and goes, "Hey, man, can I holler at you?" Which is a expression that's used an awful lot in prison. He's like, "You can give it a try and see what happens to you." And I said, "Hey, I don't think he's actually wanting to yell at you." Tommy, when I was 19, I worked for Frankie Provenzano, Frankie Pro, in Cleveland, filling cigarette machines. He knew Danny Green very well. Yeah, Frankie Pro is a famous gangster as well. That's awesome. You know, they're not what you think. I've had the pleasure. I'm sorry, it is. I've had the pleasure of meeting an awful lot of gangsters while I was in there. Smack that like button, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for notification, please. And the best of all of them was Joe. He didn't roll on anybody. He has, if you Google him afterwards, and a lot of you will, they're going to tell you that he killed a cop. He was not found guilty for that. That cop did marry his ex-wife. Whether or not it happened, I'll let you work that through. But he had a testicle blown off in a gun battle during the Colombo Wars. This guy was the real deal, right? He was a real gangster. But we talked for so long on so many issues. I spent a lot of time with this guy, and he didn't like a lot of people. So we spent a ton of time together. And he read his Bible every single day. I said to him at one point, "Hey, is there any chance you're going to go back to the life?" And he said, "No way in hell." He said, "There is no way in hell. I'm not going to die in prison." And he said, "I got, my daughter's, has kids. I want to go out and just live my life." And I don't believe them. Honest to God, I don't. And I did a bunch of research on this today because somebody sent me an email about it. It broke my heart. But there's no pictures of him, right? They say that they assume that he's back. I'm choosing to not believe it, man. I literally am choosing to not believe this until there's a reason for me to believe it. I said to him, "They're going to try to pull you back." He said, "Absolutely no question." He said, "They're going to try to pull me back." He said, "But first of all, the mob's dead, right? It's not what it used to be, and I don't want to be a part of what it is now." We had the Los Angeles Dragna crime boss in our neighborhood. As kids, we all looked the other way when we passed the house on the bus. Here's the thing, man. Most gangsters, the people that lived in neighborhoods like, you go to Bensonhurst or you go to Red Hook or you go to any of the places in New York where the gangsters lived, it's not one of those. It says it started 8 minutes ago. Is it lying? Yeah, it started 15 minutes ago. They're definitely lying. Good to see you, Iroll. Cats love the moon. Hold on one second. Do you remember a few weeks ago I suggested you look into the Mormon CIA connection? Well, I've never heard anyone talk about it except Candace Owens talked about it today. Well, I promise you, it's on a list. I got a list of all the things that people have asked me to look into. And by way of full disclosure, if they light me up, I'm definitely going to do it. They don't always light me up. Candace scares me these days. G-Man, good to see you. Candace scares me these days. She didn't used to, but the gangsters used to keep the neighborhood clean, right? They didn't allow, even if they were involved in drugs, they didn't allow drug dealing in their neighborhoods. They didn't allow freaks in their neighborhoods. Somebody raped somebody in their neighborhood. It wasn't going to be the cops that got him. If there was somebody in the neighborhood that was accused of doing things with kids, it wasn't going to be, isn't the mafia, AKA the IRS? Yeah, no, that's not so bad. It wasn't going to be the cops that got him. It was going to be the gangsters that got him. And they were going to kill the person. They weren't going to play any games. Most people were really bummed out when the FBI, which is an acronym for Forever Bothering Italians, finally sort of really did the damage, right? And drugs did the damage. Back in the 80s, like if you ever saw Goodfellas, it's a pretty good depiction of what happened to the mob. Once people started doing crap loads of cocaine, things really changed. Do I think there's a mafia in Dallas, Texas? Absolutely there is, or there was. I don't know if there is today, but there used to be. Absolutely there used to be. There is only one way out once you're in, and that is in a pine box. Yeah, that's not actually the truth anymore. It really isn't. People get old enough and they don't want to live the life. If you go away and you do 20 years and you don't tell on anybody and you walk out and say, I don't want any part of this, they're not going to say, oh, no, you're in this. You went to prison, you took the pinch, and you didn't tell on anybody. They will absolutely let people walk away. And there are plenty of examples. Hello, Auntie KK. If you take the time to start looking at this kind of content on YouTube, you will see gangsters that walked away. You'll also see gangsters that cooperated, who make videos every single day. Now, normally in the old days, if you were somebody that cooperated, you were going to get whacked, right? That's kind of how it was. But it doesn't necessarily work that way anymore. Salvatore Gravano is a great example. He's got one of the biggest, crime channels in terms of the gangsters and the mafia. And I like Sammy's content. I really do. A lot of people give me crap every time I bring that up because they're like, the dude's a rat. You know what, man? Go try to do it. Go try to, to do that time and keep your mouth shut. There was a policy under John Gotti when he was in there that you couldn't take a plea deal. Think about this for a second. So they would come to you and say, hey, we got a plea on the table. Yeah, you're in here for murder, but we'll give you 12 years and you'll be out in 6. And Gotti said, nobody takes a deal because in taking a deal, you're admitting that there's a mafia, right? So all of these guys had to take the pinch and go do 50 years because this guy said it. And John Gotti took a plea deal earlier in his life. His son took a plea deal. So it got wildly out of control. And I'm not justifying that life. I promise you I'm not. No matter how sort of fascinating they are and how much that life is fun to watch in movies, when it comes right down to it, they were all whacking each other, right? They were all killing each other. And if you got killed in the mob, you got killed by somebody that was your friend. It wasn't like they sent somebody, and it was a big, huge thing from the outside. This was somebody that, was going to say, hey, how you doing? And then put one in the back of your head while you were driving to whatever meeting you were at. Do you follow Michael Francesi, former crime boss? Awesome content. I'm well aware of Michael, and he does do great content. Whether he was a mob boss would be a very he wasn't a mob boss, but he was definitely in the mob. Now, by his own words, he wasn't a made man, right? But his father was a freaking legend. In fact, there's a scene in Goodfellas right before that scene with Joe Pesci where he freaks out and says, I'm funny how? Remember that one? As he's walking through there and he's talking about, let's get the papers, and he's introducing everybody. One of the names that he drops is Michael's father. Funny how, like I'm a clown. And if you ever, I read a lot of those books that they took and made those movies out of. And the character that Joe Pesci won an Academy Award for playing, that dude was an absolute lunatic, right? You see that in the movie, but he was 10 times worse than that. He really was. He was one of those guys that was completely out of control. And there's so much in there that is fun, but isn't true. I should probably do some shows on it. The great scene where they end up killing Billy Batts. Billy Batts was a real guy. That happened. Billy Batts had been in prison for a long time. The Shine Box scene? You will see people talk about this, and they'll say, yeah, he insulted him and this and that. Hey, Rip Curl, good to see you, my brother. I'm glad that you're here. In real life, that isn't what happened. It was all about greed. It wasn't about an insult. It wasn't about anything like that. And they didn't kill him the night that he came there. They killed him later on. They changed a lot of this because it's Hollywood. But truthfully, what they didn't want was this guy coming back after doing his time like you're supposed to and saying, all right, this is my neighborhood, right? This is the place I was before this. So now I'm a capo and I'm taking over all of this. The Irish fellow that was played by Robert De Niro basically didn't want to see everything that he was doing not, he didn't want to give all of that up. They didn't want to give the money they were making. What made those guys kind of wild and really a big deal in the mob was where their little social club was. They were so close to JFK Airport, right? Idlewild, I think it was called at the time. They were so close to that airport that they had an opportunity to steal all kinds of stuff, and as far as trucks and hijackings, and of course the Lufthansa deal, which was the second big air cargo theft that they had done, right? But a lot of what happened in that movie just wasn't real. And Billy Batts got killed, and he did. He was a made man in the mob. You can't kill someone who is already in the mob without permission. So like Henry Hill wasn't in the mob. He was an associate, right? And to be a made man, you're going to kill someone, right? They call it making bones, or there's other expressions. That's probably not as much of a mob expression as it is the interpretation of the mob expressions. But I'm doing well, Mary Krause. I hope you're doing well. But he couldn't be a made man. In order to be a made man in the mob, you would have to trace your heritage all the way back to Italy or to Sicily. That means your mom's side, your dad's side, they didn't want anybody that wasn't full-blooded Italian. So a guy like the character that De Niro played could not be in the mob. He could be an associate, and he could hang out with those guys every day, but he could never be a made man. And there were a lot of Italians, full-blooded Italians, that never got made. One of Gotti's relatives, they never made. It's a strange world, but to read that my friend might be back doing this literally broke my heart. He did a lot of time in prison. He didn't tell on anybody. He didn't cut any deals. It's a bummer, right? To think that he's going back into that life. When you're in prison, everybody says the same thing. When I get out, I'm not doing any of that crap. I'm never going back to that. I'm not even going to hang out with these people. I'm not going to do any of that. Never knew Mafia. I knew two pimps, and no, I wasn't working. We were just friends. Amazing. You were hanging out with pimps. You probably knew a few junkies then, because they usually hang out in the same circles. That's a crime in prison that is really looked down on. Pimping and pandering is not considered an honorable crime in prison, especially for the guys with lighter skin, right? If you're a white boy and you're in prison for selling a woman, you're going to have a very long prison sentence. It's not respected. It's considered pretty foul. But other races have different views on that, right? But within the white boys, it is really not very popular. Tommy, did they all hold to never hurting women or children? A great example of this would be Salvatore Gravano, Sammy the Bull. Sammy the Bull was in jail, right? John Gotti was in jail. They were both in jail looking at doing the same sentences. And John Gotti got to watch them walk Sammy the Bull out. And if you've ever seen what a unit looks like, it's about 128 guys in the average federal unit. So he watched them go to the cell, take him out, and walk him out of the unit. And he, for probably the first hour, hey, Archie's mom, I would imagine for that first hour, he was probably thinking, maybe they're going to medical, right? Maybe there was a death in his family and they're going down to the chapel where he can make phone calls to his family. Those are reasons that you would be taken out of a unit, usually medical or a death in the family, that kind of thing. But once he realized what was going on, they had a sit down in there, and allegedly, all of these people went into the visiting room, and everybody wants to kill everybody in his family. That's just kind of how it goes down. They all want everybody in Salvatore Gravano's family dead. They want to blow up the house that his family lives in because they can't get at him. And even among all of the crap that was going on, John Gotti said nobody touches his family, right? Yeah, they were pretty big with that. Doesn't mean that some people didn't get killed along the way, but normally, if that happens, it's because you got somebody in the family who's in the process of trying to tell. Like if you happen to be a wife or a girlfriend and you're working, yeah, they'll kill a woman for that. But they were not ever the kind of guys that went after people's kids or went after people's families. There was a code. There's a lot of other stories too, like in Goodfellas when he talks about, they all had mistresses. There's some pretty great stories about guys that would take their mistress to the same place they took their wife. And old school gangsters would never put up with that. It's disrespecting your wife, which is really funny if you think about the mentality of a lot of this, right? What they call honorable and what they don't call honorable. But I will say this. Reese had a great show tonight. Thank you, Natalie. I love my wife. Relatable Reese. And you know, I'm her biggest fan. I really am. Usually if you don't see me in there talking, I'm lurking. Does this apply to just physically hurting women or to financially hurting them as well? No. What it means is that they're not going to kill somebody. They're not going to take someone out who's in your family. You do something wrong, you become a rat, they're not going to go kill your kids. There are other organizations outside of the Italians that do things like that across the board. But that's not the kind of thing that the Italians put up with back in the day at all, right? It wasn't something that was allowed. But, you know, as far as the hypocrisy goes too, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Donnie Brasco, but since we're talking about gangster shows, Donnie Brasco is a movie where Joe Pistone is the name of the actual human being that the movie was made about, right? And Johnny Depp played Joe Pistone. Angie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for helping keep free speech alive. I do really appreciate that. It's a huge deal. Do me a favor, 400 video, smack that like button, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for notification. Let's piss off YouTube. It's fun. Try it. You'll like it. I promise. So Joe Pistone, who worked for the FBI, went in there and ingratiated himself and came up with paperwork and some people that would BS his way in. And he basically got invited into a crime family in New York. And this guy was hanging out with these guys. He was hanging out with them while they were whacking people. He was hanging out with them while they were breaking the law. He was going into their houses and meeting their family and doing all of this, all while wearing a wire, right? And here's the problem with this, because I understand that this is how you get the mob, right? But if you're deep undercover doing this, you know full on that the guy that's inviting you in is going to get killed. The second that they find out you're a cop, he's dead. Any of the other people that worked with you on a daily basis, they're going to kill them too. I don't think that's any better than the gangsters. I mean, you can agree to disagree, but it's a really jacked up situation to go into something as a good guy, knowing full well your actions are going to get the guy that you're working with killed, and be all right with that. He also broke a bunch of rules on his own. One of the rules when you do this kind of undercover stuff is you can't talk about it when it's over, ever. And that movie didn't get made because somebody leaked out the info. That movie got made because Joe Pistone decided he was going to sell his story, right? This guy's no better off than any of the gangsters. In my opinion, he's just a piece of shit with a badge. You can choose to disagree, but if what you're doing, you know for a fact is going to get someone killed, how is that any different than shooting them, right? I mean, you justify it in your head because these things. What about lyrical gangsters? I'm the lyrical gangster. Well played, Tim Trimble. Hey, look at this. Someone's turning green. You know who to thank. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Trace. That's a good-looking kitty, isn't it? That is a good-looking cat. You know, I like cats more than people. I know it's probably not a nice thing to say, but I can't remember meeting a cat I didn't like. You know? By the way, please don't send me an email apologizing for disagreeing with me on something. Makes me feel bad. I have no problem with people who disagree. I have problems with people who act like assholes when they disagree. We can all disagree with one another, right? We just don't have to go off on each other about it. That kind of chaps my ass. Here comes the hot step. But you know what's funny, Natalie Travis? That song, I was in the process. When that song was popular, I was moving drugs from Houston, Texas to Boston, Massachusetts. It was kind of a hustle that I had been doing for a while. And I had to drive one of those trips on my onesies. I had to do that entire thing alone. It's a long ass time in a car. You would not believe how long a drive that is. And that song came on every 6 friggin' seconds for the entire trip. No matter what radio station that I had on, they played that song. By the end of it, I was singing it when it came on. I was embarrassed. Tommy, who do you think was the strongest mob? The Italians, the Sicilian, or the Irish? Well, here's the thing. So, funny story. The people that I was bringing the dope to from Texas to Boston was the Irish mob. And I could tell you a bunch of stories. What I will tell you is this. They didn't have the level of respect for people that they worked with the same way that the Italians did. I'll tell you a quick story. I probably shouldn't, but I will. Look at you turning green. You look fantastic. Mimi, look at this. Look at all these people turning green. This is good. This week, I'm going to be doing a members only, I promise you. And I'm going to tell a lot of these stories that I probably shouldn't tell on here, but I'll tell you one. So we were driving dope up there. And once we got it to where we were going, they wanted us to deliver some of it. And I got nothing to do with these guys. But the guy that I was delivering it to was a big deal in the Irish organization, right? We were friends for a long time. We're not anymore, but we were friends for a long time. And he said, will you drive with me? I said, absolutely. We went and dropped off dope, right? And it was boxed up. They had boxed it up, weighed it out, everything else. We drove it over there. And the person that it was dropped off to said, your drivers broke into the dope and stole some of it before it got here. Now, I'm telling you the truth. I got no reason to lie to anybody. We didn't do that. It never happened. So he said to the guy, come on, man, how long have you known me? I didn't break into that. We got dope at the house. Why would I possibly steal anything? It's just going to create a problem, right? It's not something I would have ever done. They said, yeah, now we believe you. However, they're kind of pissed off. So we're going to put some marks on you. And he proceeded to pistol whip my friend in the face. And to me, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I was like, and I thought my friend was going to, kill somebody, but he took it. And then they handed him a big wad of money and said, now go drink at a bunch of bars. And when people ask you what happened, tell them, right? You were skimming and you got beat up. That to me was the most messed up thing I ever saw in my life. That's how you repay loyalty. It was beyond disturbing to me. So I never had a lot of respect, at least for the crew in Boston. But that would have been, look at this. Thank you so much. A bunch of people turning green. That would have been that was towards the ending run of Whitey Bulger, right? And the mob that he was running in Boston at the time. It was so in my opinion, Rhonda, good to see you. In my opinion, I had more respect for the Italian guys. And when I did time with them in prison, they also did time in a very different way. They were very respectful guys. I never saw any Italian guys in there that were racist. I never saw any of them, clicking up with any of the swastika crew. And I know that there are people that watch this because I've been in prison, and there's a lot of people that watch this that are into that life. I've never met anything stupider in my entire life than somebody that hates somebody based on the color of their skin. It's literally the most ignorant thing on planet Earth. And I mean ignorant, right? It's because they're afraid of people because they've never met them. And they build this fear up, and then they get into little groups of haters. And I never saw any of that from the Italians at all. Just never saw it. And inside, that's a frustrating thing to deal with. Even worse if your best friend is black. And my best friend in federal prison was black. So it was kind of an issue as far as that goes. But there are more organized operations. I think some of the Asian gangs in the United States are literally probably the best in this aspect, because the level of loyalty with some of those gangs are terrifying. Hey, Florida, good to see you. Rhode Island checking in. Tommy Scoville, the godfather of true crime and all things. That is a kind thing to say, Papa Kenny. I appreciate you. Look at this. Everybody's turning green. Thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate you, and you will thank me. The nice thing about doing the members only stuff is it's a lot easier to answer everybody's questions. It really is. Speaking from experience, seriously, being affiliated growing up in the day was off the charts. So much fun. I had a blast. The people, the money, crazy. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. I knew a bunch of people in the life. I really did. I knew a bunch of people in the life, and for the most part, I liked all of them. I really did. It's probably different if you're getting ordered around by them to go kill people or do things like that. But I really enjoyed the hell out of spending time with these guys, and they did live different. You know what I mean? They did. Everywhere they went, they were treated different. I love you, Tommy, for feeling that way about people. Oh, that's a kind thing to say. I appreciate that. You know what's funny is most of my haters are Nazis. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying literally they're Nazis. They got Swazi tattoos. I've never had a lot of respect for that. Really, if you're a guy or a gal for that matter that can sit and say, of all the ideologies on earth that have happened in the last, couple of hundred years or in, recent memory, that Hitler guy really had his shit together, then you should go right past that water cooler and take the left door, because I promise you I'm going to get rid of your happy ass. You make me sick. Hey, Marianne, thank you. She's 424 here and 222 likes. I mean, some of you are obviously Nazis. Oh my God, my dogs are always hungry and the phone always rings when Tommy's on. Well, I have that effect on dogs and cats. I've had so many people that said to me, you go live and my cat comes and sits and stares at the computer. I think they're looking for squirrel. Squirrel and zipper. I think they may be looking for my cat, but I get that a lot. Believe it or not, a lot of people say that. 425 in here. Do me a favor. Hit that like button, right? Hit subscribe and hit the bell for notification. You'll thank me later. Your granddad was a Nazi sympathizer. I would not be surprised if my great grandfather was. I never met him, but there was. People don't realize how many Nazi sympathizers there were in the United States before the war. Right? They had at one time they were having huge rallies in places like Madison Square Garden size rallies of, I can't remember what it was called, the Bund or the Bull. I can't think of the name of it, but there was a huge push in the United States for that crap. But I think at that point, people didn't have a real idea of what this guy was going to be, right? We look at this through the lens of today, and it was about liberation time when we really got an idea of what they were doing to people in those concentration camps, which is just the most horrible thing in the world. Tommy, are you going to do a live about the guy that disappeared in New Mexico? I very well might. And I say that, Christian, because about 4 other people today have said that. Not that you're not wonderful company, but I was wondering where Reese is. She's an added benefit to the channel. Well, you know what? Let's give her some crap. That's always fun, and we'll find out where she's at. It's just fun to bust her chops. Everyone is wondering where you're at. They're actually complaining that you are not in the chat right now. Is it something I said? I thought we were getting along beautifully. I'm kidding, by the way. We were talking right before we went live, but she does have 5 animals and a really great kid. She really does. Her son is an amazing human being. It does help keep free speech alive. It really does. And what if you're new to this and you don't understand what I'm saying? Yes, they called it the Bund. Thank you. See that? It's my brother from another mother. If you've never gone over to his channel, you should go over there and hit subscribe because he's fun to watch. And you will believe me, you will think he may be a Scoville. Johnny should sit next to you during my streams. We do shows like that. It's been a minute, but we will absolutely do that. I promise. Show the tinfoil hat photo. If I do, good Lord, scares me. If I do, she will show up and I'll be in trouble. You absolutely love Reese. I do too. Everyone I've sent over to that channel has thanked me. I mean that. Either that or they get so angry that I never have to hear from them again. Either way, it's a win. By the way, yesterday, I think that there was some misunderstanding. I wasn't saying I was coming here to get rid of subscribers. I was coming here and talking about stuff in a way that people are going to leave. And that's not a bad thing. I'm sorry, it's not. If my goal in life was, to have 250,000 subs, it would be very difficult to do the show that I do with that kind of, see that? If I had put that up, you guys were trying to bait me into putting up that photo. Reese, just for the record, I'll have you know that I was really kind because everyone was saying, you really should put up the picture of the tinfoil on her head thing because she's not here. And I said, I'm not going to do that. What am I, low budget? Tell me that's not a great picture, though. Can't help myself. So I'm hoping against hope, people, that my friend is not back in the mob. It's kind of one of those things that literally breaks my heart as a thought. I don't want this guy dying in prison. There's nothing worse. You watched Goodfellas, right? You didn't want to see Paulie Cicero die in prison. His real name was Paul Vario, and he did die in prison. And that's what happens to most gangsters. It didn't used to be this way, right? There was old law. Hey, Snooky from Oregon. I lived in Sheridan, Oregon for about 9 months. Yeah, no, there's a few of his followers that don't like me, but it's kind of how it is. Every show I watch, Reese is better than the last. Yeah, you should see some of the other shows you don't see. Giggity. That picture is hilarious. See, that's what most people think, and she embarrasses me all the time. So it's tit for tat. The truth is, there's no retirement home for gangsters. Back in the heyday, they call it old law or new law, and the feds changed a lot of the laws in hopes of going after the La Cosa Nostra, right, the Mafia. Hey, Scott, glad you're here. Michigan. And they went after the mob in a different way. In the old days, if you got convicted of murder, right, and you could end up getting 15 years, and you used to do about 60% of that sentence. So if you got a 15-year sentence, there were gangsters that went away and got out 8 years later. When the new law came in, you were looking at 50, right? You were looking at 50 basically at a minimum. And when that started to happen, a lot of people were ready to go in there and do a short sentence, right? Someone could go in there and say, yeah, I'll give up 8 years of my life for this. When they start saying you're 42, right? By 85% of your sentence, you're going to be 88 when you get out. I'm a retired Connecticut nurse and just want to express that all the gangster mafia inmates were always very respectful. You know what? They are a very respectful crew, truthfully. How do you find her? You find her at Relatable Reese, Angie Martin. Relatable Reese. I didn't say it. Someone else did. I didn't say it. Someone else did. Laugh every time I say it or type it. Well, good. Well, a laugh is always a good thing. Christian, you're late. You always talk to me about going on time. Everybody, boo this man. 41 minutes late. Boo this man. I'm kidding. But seriously, next time, try to get here on time. A lot of times, you love chips? Good. A lot of time, to Tommy, they may not be fully back into the life, but the younger generation will seek counselor advice from a uncle, grandfather, etc. And if it gets recorded on a tap, they use railroad. So, and this is actually a wildly astute comment, because one of the things that has been speculated on by an awful lot of gangsters is that he is being brought in more as a senior statesman, somebody that is going to try to calm down the mob or try to get them back on track, kind of thing. And normally the feds aren't too pissed off about this, because my brother's channel is called Chase the Heat, right? Chase the Heat. And they think it's going to calm down the mob. The problem with that is that Joe Waverly, was never really known for being a calming influence on anyone. When I was small, a witch put a curse on me that I would eat chips. Is that why you're such a slave to chip? Is that it? Sorry. But this is, there's no retirement home for these guys. And unfortunately, especially when you entered in with the drug era, this is kind of when it just went bad, because now you had people that were going to roll on one another. There was a guy named Valachi back in the day, and the Valachi papers is kind of a big deal. Those avocado chips in Ecuador, they're fire. Italian mob really still around? Yes, they're absolutely still around. They are definitely different than what they are, but or what they were rather, but they are definitely still alive. When I worked for Frankie Pro, he respected my father as a non-connected local businessman, so he kept me safe and away from crime. Yeah. He'd say, just do your job, don't ask questions. A good piece of advice always, right? So the Valachi papers, Valachi was the first guy to absolutely just turn. And he went as far as to say what the ceremony to induct somebody into the mob was. He was the first absolute huge rat. And he sticks out like Wednesday in the middle of the week, because there was a time when nobody ratted on anybody. They just kept their mouth shut. It was kind of how it went down. It isn't that way at all anymore, right? I love free speech. I do too. I am. And you know what, man? If it costs us a little bit of, we're doing fine. We're getting enough views. For real, I'm not tripping. I would much rather have this than 35 or 40,000 views. When I was doing Diddy, I said things like essay and I said things like grape, until somebody who reached out to me and said, you have no idea how offensive that is to me as a woman after being raped. And it's like getting kicked in the junk. And I promise you, no one's ever going to say it to me again. I promise you, it's there's right and wrong, and using euphemisms that take away from how horrific something is. I'm not going to call someone a minor attracted person, right? They're a pedophile, and if that costs me a couple of views, I'm cool with that, right? That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. Who gunned down Frank Kelly? Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I know a bunch of rumors, and that's what everybody else knows. And to be honest, like I said, I love Sammy the Bull, right? When Sammy the Bull went to court, he said he pulled the trigger once. Then they get out and they start channels, and it's a better story if he killed 19 people. He is careful enough to say that he absolutely was responsible or involved with 19 murders. But there's a lot of people, once you get out, it's crazy. But once people get out of this, there's money in saying you were worse than you were, right? Because now these people are monetizing their past. And I'm not mad at them. I really am not. In my defense, I watch on my phone and can't see pics. Oh, you cannot? Well, if you're just getting here, the guy that I'm talking about is the guy I did time with. His name is Joel Waverly Sr. This is what he looked like in his heyday. Tell me he's not a handsome cuss. He looks like he should be on The Sopranos. By the time they busted him and sent him away for a very long time, he looked like that. And when he walked out, he and I walked out of prison about 3 or 4 months apart from one another. This is him. And we were incredibly close. We really were. In fact, all of his paperwork, right, which is the one thing that you really need to keep very close tabs on in prison. It says what you're in there for and all of those things. And he said to me, can you mail my paperwork to the street? And I said, sure. And it wasn't put in anything. And he goes, if you want to read it, you can read it. He said, I don't care, but send it to the street. And I read his entire case. And this guy was like, it read better than Goodfellas. It read better than anything. And I mean, these were all names that you've heard, right? The guy that shot him in the testicles was allegedly, right? We should always probably lead with an allegedly. Where was he? He was in Brooklyn. He was in Brooklyn, Waverly Avenue in Brooklyn. That's why they call him Joe Waverly. And Bensonhurst. And then as he started making more money, he went out to Long Island. But Joe Scarpa and he were at each other's throats for a really long time. And allegedly, Scarpa was the one that blew off his onion, which is kind of a tough thing to have happen to you, right? What is that? Hi, Reese. Summit was very heartfelt time with you today. See that? Told you, Reese. I heard a guy talking about him when I was locked up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Didn't hear a bad thing. There's a game that you can play, and the game sells chips that you can gamble with playing poker, and they're all gangsters on the chips. And I think he's the $100 or the $500 chip because he never once, Uniballer, well played, Tim Trimble. He never once told on anybody, never rolled on a human being, and that is a rare thing. And he was not a young man when they broke him off that 20-year sentence. He knew he was going to be looking at late 70s when he got out of prison, and he just took it. Love you guys on the lifeboat. Here's to free speech. Sue Nelson, thank you so much. We're back being friends again, Sue Nelson. Not because you gave me a super chat, but because at this point I no longer think that you're skiing in Switzerland. Not going to lie to you, I was a little bummed out about that. Yeah, I could have done without knowing that. But that's, I'm no longer mad at you, man. I no longer am mad at you. Apparently my wife was married to a guy with one nut. Appreciate you sharing that. 100. Did not know that. See that? Look at that. I work on it on a daily basis myself. But so, if you're one of those people that prays, this is a guy that I swear to you, I'm telling you the true story. So I would go, he was the only person I hung out with. The two of us, there were not a lot of people on that yard that were fun to be around. So we spent a lot of time together. We ate all our meals together. We just sort of hung out. And I would say 9 out of 10 times when I walked into his cell, he was reading a Bible. And the first time I went, is that a Bible? And he goes, yeah, what are gangsters effing heathens? And I said, no, just kind of took me by surprise. And then he would read books on reflexology. Those were like the two things that he was wildly into. But just a really interesting cat, really one of the kindest people I've ever met. And when I went to visiting, very rarely did I go to visiting in prison. I just did not. Sorry. How about that? So we're in visiting. You can't stand up in visiting. You're not allowed to move. Your people can go up to the vending machines and get you something. But as an inmate, you have to sit down. Who was the most corrupt or evilest crime boss? I would say that John Gotti did more damage to the mob than anybody else. So that's probably the one I would go with. There were also crime bosses that didn't care if you sold drugs. So that wasn't great. But I would say John Gotti was probably the one that did the most damage. He was just kind of a loose cannon. Are you following the Joseph Dugar situation and his wife Kendall? That entire family is such fraud. I yell profanity at my TV when I watch the latest about this case. So I'm assuming you listened to some of the phone calls. Really, really nasty. Roberto Suarez Gomez. I got to take a picture with him in the 80s. Yes, I do. I am familiar with that name. Reese, I saw a video where Tommy proposed. Oh, no. Did you see that? But so we're in the visiting room, and you're not allowed to get up. And I'm in there, and my parents had come down, and that very rarely happened. I kind of hated it. It's hard to have your people come in and visit you when you're in a cage, right? Watching them leave at the end of it. As beautiful as it is to have them visit you. And for a while, I was in a prison that was very close to where my sister was, and she would come to visit me all the time. But when they leave, it's just heartbreaking. It's one of those things that it's almost too difficult to be able to put up with what? Oh, you're back. Good. See that? I was getting ready to get angry. But Joe stands up in the middle of visiting and starts walking around. And the guy comes over and goes, hey, Joe, you can't walk around. You got to sit down. He goes, give me a minute. And he walked over to introduce himself to my parents. And just super, super kind, shook my mom and dad's hand and said to my mother, you know what? There aren't a lot of good guys in prison, but your son is one of them, which was really a lovely thing to say. And as he walked away, my mother went, wow, what a nice guy. Do you spend time with him? I said, every day, Mom. He's kind of my best friend in here. And she's like, what is he in here for? I said, well, he may or may not have been the head of the Colombo crime family at one time. And she's like, that's not funny. I said, no, I'm serious as hell. But, my mom's also Italian. So we might have had a family member or two that could at least relate. Remember that? I do. Went to a wedding once with my brother when we were kids, and it was right out of The Godfather. We had an uncle that sat at the door and nodded to people as they came in or gave them the head shake. It was absolutely bizarre. Always be yourself, unless you can be a moose. Then always be a moose. But yeah, always be yourself isn't a bad piece of advice either. But this was actually my dad's shirt. Everybody on earth called my dad Moose. So I got a decent amount of Moose stuff. And what's funny is I had a nickname Rocco. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Caddyshack, but at the end when he wants to get money out of him, he goes, oh, I can't find your wallet? Moose, Rocco. Go help him find his wallet. Never watched those movies? Mop Man, some of those movies are fantastic. For real, I have in Goodfellas when he said, Jimmy was the kind of guy that rooted for the bad guys in movies. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, I saw my homie still missing mom on the missing person cards. Sucked. It's the best piece of advice I can give to anybody that romanticizes any of that is, people used to joke and say there are no retirement homes for gangsters, and there are a ton of them, 120, right, that I know of. They're called federal prison, and that's kind of where it happens. See that? The wife knew. She's seen that. Caddyshack is one of the best movies ever made, but not in its time. In its time, they crapped all over it. In fact, one of the guys who made it committed suicide. My dad's nickname in the Navy during Vietnam was Moose, 6'5", 260. My dad was about an inch shorter than your dad, but he was about 6'4", 280 for most of my life. He's a real big dude. And apparently he was that size when he was about ninth grade. So he really kind of stuck out like Wednesday in the middle of the week. How accurate do you think the movies The Godfather were? Well, according to the people that were there, they were pretty accurate, but I've heard from gangsters that the one that they seem to like the most is Goodfellas. I think they really nailed that film. I mean, they made Henry Hill look like a tough guy, which he most assuredly was not. He was good at stealing stuff. He was good at making money, like the mob. They call them earners, and he was a good earner. He was a guy that made a lot of money for the Lucchese family, but he wasn't a tough guy, and he probably wasn't as suave as they made him out to be. But by the time that film had been made, he had absolutely destroyed the Lucchese crime family by ratting on everybody, and there were a lot of people that didn't much respect that. but Hollywood has to make him a lot less hateable if they're going to make that movie fly. And the crazy thing is, when that movie first came out, or they were doing they were just starting to get that movie ready to release, they wanted it to have an X rating. No joke. The violence, they had to take a lot of it out. If you ever had an opportunity to see the original, apparently it is one of the most violent films out there. It was horrifically violent. And they had to back a lot of it off so that they could get an R rating. Imagine having an X-rated film based on violence and not nudity. I mean, that's pretty wild stuff. But Kathy Wright says, very accurate. That's what most people that were around that life said, that they really kind of nailed it. You know, the mob during that time. And it's almost sad that they didn't do an epilogue, you know, that this is it. This is what destroyed them. Because by the time Henry Hill was done testifying, he had absolutely destroyed the mob. And he was not a good dude, right? When he went into witness protection, a lot of people don't know this, but when he went into witness protection, he didn't just take his wife, he also took a mistress, which is pretty foul. And he was abusive to his family. He beat his wife, he beat his kids, right? He was not a particularly admirable guy. You saw a presser of the young girl Bundy killed? Wow. That's the one that he denied until the bitter end. You know, he killed that one girl that was underage. I never saw one episode of The Sopranos. Watch, my wife is going to write some of the nastiest stuff in there because she was a fan. But I never once saw one episode of The Sopranos. My mother's father was 6'4", and believe it or not, he was on a submarine as a cook. Spent a lot of his time bent over while cooking. At least that's what my mom told me. Good Lord, how is that possible? How is that possible? Did I hear this? I did not, but that is terrifying. Did you hear that they swapped the prop for a real horse's head in The Godfather? Francis Ford apparently wanted a real reaction. Well, I bet you to hell it got a real reaction. That is the most disturbing thing I've ever heard. I guess at the end they didn't put no animals were harmed in the making of this movie, except for that horse we killed. That's terrifying. I did not hear that. Did I ever see The Shield? I did not. What's Sopranos? A singing group? See, Mopman gets it. Bundy was. Listen, when this one's over, put in the comments section if you want me to do a show on serial killers. I'm not kidding you. Like in prison, I don't know why they're all so preoccupied, but every single serial killer book that's ever written is in every prison you go to. Like those guys in there, you know, will have those books sent in. And let's say you have 25 or 30 books sent to you over the course of a year. You can only take 3 with you when you go to the next yard. So all those end up in the library. So usually like the books on the Green River Killer or the books on Bundy, there'd be 5 of them in the library. So if you're going down and you're reading so much that you're going through it at an alarming rate, you end up grabbing that. They just solved it today. Oh, that's the press you're talking about. Well, I'll be damned. We all kind of knew he did it. Are you talking about the girl in Florida? She was like 13 or 14. She was the one found behind an old shack. It was the one underage girl that he killed in Florida. Yeah, that's disturbing. Well, it's nice to know that they proved it, but I think it was he was convicted of it, right? Everybody kind of assumed he did it. Tommy, my father sold custom-made furniture to the Mafia back in the day. His company was in the Bronx. Then he probably met some of the biggest legends ever. Yeah, he would never speak about it because it made him a pedophile. And he was in prison, right? He could be in his head, you know what else? Right until the very end, he never admitted that he was a necrophiliac either. Yeah, she was 12. I mean, yeah, that's a kind of foul that, I mean, and it's funny how criminals can justify things in their head. He cut off women's heads and brought them home so that he could have, sexual relations with a severed head's mouth. But somehow to him, killing a 12-year-old was foul. Your son is 6'3" and on a submarine. Got to watch the head. And they're all volunteers, right? That's one of the only, that and a tank. They don't make people go into that. Well, Slot Puppy, you did fantastic. We're really close to it being over. You're killing it. You almost made it to the end. I'm proud of you. Proud of you. So if there's a serial killer you want me to talk about, I promise you all I got to do is kind of buff up on him. Vito Corleone was modeled after Carlo Gambino. That is the truth. He was. And a lot of it, they say, a lot of it was pretty accurate. And The guy that wrote the original book for that was just absolutely incredible and really, really sort of into it. Look here, big guy, you need to watch The Sopranos. Ask Reese. It's amazing. Great characters and music. I believe that. I guess I'd have to check it out. But one of the problems that I have because of my traumatic brain injury, if anything is edited really quickly, I'll instantly get a migraine. Like I can watch old movies because if you think about a movie in terms of how long each clip of film is, if I watch something like a James Bond film or a Fast and Furious, they go like this. Each clip of film is a half a second. My brain will not reassemble that without me getting a migraine. I mean, quick as hell. I heard Bundy was in Sandy, Oregon. Yeah. My friend was raped and killed as a freshman walking through the woods from school. They never caught the killer. 1978 stupid cops have DNA. He absolutely was in Sandy, Utah. He grabbed a girl from Holiday. And oddly enough, she was next door neighbors with somebody that I became a business partner with. Am I still convinced Sasha Riley is fake? 150%. That is the worst concocted story in history. You know what I mean? If you can pick one thing out of a story that's just absolutely patently absurd, then I'm not buying the rest of it, right? And there's just a lot in that story that's patently absurd. The fact that all of the people that molested him are now huge politicians on the Republican tickets, right? They weren't at the time. What are the odds of that? I get fascinated by things like that. So you look at the odds. What are the odds that somebody actually makes it all the way to the top echelon of politics? And that alone is like winning a lottery ticket. What are the odds that a guy that's working, like a guy that's in college on a wrestling team, right? And a guy that is stationed in Europe and a guy that is going to become a Supreme Court justice all end up raping this guy? That's a bullshit story, with all due respect. Our parents took us to New Orleans regularly when we were little. Do you know if mob is still heavy there? It was the last time I was there. It absolutely was the last time I was there. And I don't know if you ever spend any time. New Orleans is a great city. It's an absolutely great city, but it kind of has that feeling. Tommy, was Richard Speck considered a serial killer? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you only have to do 3, I believe, right? That's what they serial killer. And they do want you to have a cooling off period. If you kill them all in one day, that tends not to be. Did I like the movie The Irishman? I thought it was too long. I thought it was too long. The book was so much better, right? What's the name of the book? So I hear you paint houses, right? Something like that. It was an amazing book. I thought the book was fantastic. And it gives you a lot more detail of where we got this story from, right? Because we've been looking for Jimmy Hoffa forever. And, the guy that spilled the beans on all of this, they break down why, in the book, they break down why that's believable. So while I liked the movie, I thought the book was a lot better. Our Rue, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. You all are keeping free speech alive. And I'm going to do this. I should do it way more often. But I do want to shout out everybody because this is kind of a big deal. Joan Marie, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Angie, thank you. I appreciate you. It really does make a difference. Tracy, look at this. Thank you so much. Hello, Jen. Appreciate you. Hey, Mimi, thank you so much. By the way, I love the name Mimi. And Mimi comes back for a second dip. Thank you. It means the world to me. It really does. Thank you. You look great in green. Speaking of double dipping, there you are, back in the saddle again. And even though she went to Zermatt, Switzerland, still a big fan of you, Susan. Rue, thank you. I appreciate all of you. All of you that smack that like button make a difference. It really does help on the way out. Then get over there and check out Relatable Reese. You're absolutely going to thank me. Look at that. Cats Over the Moon said it too. 2 of us can't be wrong. Not on a channel like this. But I appreciate you guys showing up. It means the world to me. I am having a Reese withdrawal in a way that is almost unhealthy. So I'm going to end this show because I need to look at her. Just keeping it real. But I am Tommy. Between now and the next time I see you, say a prayer for the Guthrie family and say a prayer that this is just a rumor and that my friend is not doing this, because it would break my heart. It really would. Doesn't mean I might not call him and ask him for a few favors. Hey, there's this guy I can't stand. I'm kidding. But you know who you are. No, I'm kidding. What the Fox? Thank you so much. Look at that. Turning people green. And look for content this week where I can tell you guys stories that I wouldn't have the guts to tell to the entire world. I'm going to be doing it on the Tommy, you need to do a show on how old school mafia guys helped the USA win World War II. You're right. That would be fascinating. They also, that's not the only time they worked with law enforcement. I can think of 3 different times where they, including attempts where it may not have been successful, like they were actively trying to find Son of Sam. You know, they were out there looking at all of the different places where people might go to make out. They had gangsters out there on the lookout for him. And when they called and said, we want your help, they said, we'd be more than happy to help, but you ain't going to arrest this guy, right? If we find him, we're going to absolutely, unalive this guy. That's murder for those not paying attention, Johnny Scoble. They were going to murder him, murk his ass. So do yourself a favor. Check out Johnny Scoble's channel at Chase the Heat. He will be there tomorrow for One Hot Minute. Today, we literally flipped a coin to see who was going to have to do that, and he kind of got screwed in the process. I am Tommy. Between now and the next time I see you, hit that nepotism thing. Check out my brother and my wife. That's Chase the Heat and Relatable Reese. And I will see you tomorrow night. Thank you all for being you. Did you notice I didn't do one of those stupid April Fool's things? You're welcome. Maybe next year. All right, people. See you on the next one. I'm Tommy. Have a good night.